Under the same sky, while the city pulsed with noise and indifference, a single question echoed like thunder: what if one small act of kindness could change everything? People walked past one another without seeing, without hearing, without feeling. But that night, the rhythm of life bent. A storm raged, and rain washed the streets as if the heavens demanded attention. In the chaos, a fragile voice gasped for help, collapsing against the cold pavement. No one stopped. Cars passed. Feet hurried away. Only one young woman, arms trembling but heart steady, leaned down. She whispered comfort, shielded the frail man with her umbrella, and pulled him close to safety. A sleek black car slowed. The man behind the wheel, raised in luxury and trained to look away, felt something unfamiliar burn inside his chest. He almost kept driving. Almost. But the sound of that woman's voice carried through the storm, and for reasons he couldn't explain, he braked. Together, strangers from opposite worlds bent over the same broken soul. Their eyes met. One pair, hardened by privilege yet haunted by loneliness. The other, filled with warmth, though tested by struggle. Neither trusted the other, but in that moment they carried the same burden. The man breathed weakly, whispered through cracked lips words that neither of them would ever forget: one love, one humanity, never forget. The words hung like prophecy. The woman clung to them as though they were sacred. The man in the car scoffed, or at least pretended to, yet the phrase branded itself inside him. They brought the stranger into shelter until his trembling stopped. By morning, he was gone, but his words remained. And with them, something began. The young man in the car, Arav, returned to his usual world of glittering lights, contracts, and polished tables, but he could not shake the look in the woman's eyes. The young woman, Maya, returned to her little bookstore tucked away between alleys, selling paperbacks for coins, but her thoughts circled back to the arrogance and hesitation she had seen in him. Their paths should have never crossed again, yet destiny had other plans. Days later, Arav appeared at the door of the bookstore. He pretended to browse, asked for novels he would never read, lingered in the aisles longer than necessary. Maya saw through him at once. "Books aren't trophies," she said. He smirked but stayed. Slowly, words unfolded between them. She asked about loneliness, about whether money truly filled the emptiness people tried to hide. He spoke in guarded tones, revealing just enough to make her curious. His world had given him everything except peace. Her world had taken much but left her with compassion intact. Their differences clashed, yet something invisible drew them closer, but walls existed outside their small conversations. Arav's family had mapped out his future: a strategic marriage, business empires to merge, no room for detours. Maya's neighbors watched with suspicion, whispering warnings about rich men who used and abandoned. Every time Maya's heart leaned forward, she pulled it back, reminding herself of these walls. Every time Arav's heart softened, he tightened his jaw, afraid of betraying the expectations that chained him. Still, there were moments when silence between them spoke louder than caution. "Do you believe love can break walls?" Maya asked one evening, her voice shaking. Arav looked down at his hands. "I want to," he admitted. "But I don't know if I'm strong enough." Before either could answer that doubt, fate forced its hand. A fire tore through one of the poorest quarters of the city. Smoke clawed at the sky, screams split the air. Maya ran without hesitation. She carried water, tore her own clothes into bandages, soothed crying children. And when she turned, through the flames and chaos, she saw him. Arav, ignoring calls from his father to stay away, running toward danger. The man who once looked away from suffering now lifted beams, carried the injured, stood shoulder to shoulder with strangers who never knew his name. Together, they moved like two halves of the same heart. Sweat, ash, and tears blurred into one. Children clung to Maya's arms while Arav shielded them with his own body. People who had never spoken to each other before began working side by side, inspired by the unlikely pair leading the rescue. For the first time, the city witnessed something rare, not wealth, not poverty, not labels, only humanity. Cameras captured the moment, the son of privilege kneeling in ashes beside the daughter of struggle. The world was forced to look. As dawn broke and the fire finally surrendered, silence spread across the ruins. Maya's face was streaked with soot, her hands raw, but her eyes glowed. Arav stood beside her, breath heavy, heart heavier still. In that fragile morning light, Maya whispered, "This is what humanity looks like." He turned toward her, shaken to his core. The mask of arrogance cracked, revealing something raw, something almost broken. For the first time, he wondered aloud, maybe this is the life I want. The city buzzed with their story. Some praised. Some criticized. But for Arav and Maya, the fire had already done what words could not. It had bound them, shown them a glimpse of love that stretched beyond two hearts and into the soul of an entire people. Yet the journey had only begun, and the walls they once questioned still stood, higher than ever, waiting to test the promise of one love, one humanity. The fire had ended, but its embers lit something no water could quench. Whispers spread across the city of the rich heir who had abandoned luxury to stand in ashes with the forgotten. Some called it a publicity stunt, others claimed it was rebellion, but in the hearts of those who had witnessed it, a seed had been planted. Arav walked the streets differently now. He no longer avoided eye contact with the poor, no longer drowned his emptiness in fleeting distractions. Instead, he followed Maya's footsteps, learning how she listened, how she comforted, how she believed that every person mattered. For the first time in his life, he felt alive. Maya, though touched, remained cautious. She saw the spark in him but also the chains he carried. His world would not forgive him easily. Still, every day he chose to return. He brought food, medicine, and clothes. He read to children in the shelter she managed. People who once cursed his family's name began greeting him with hesitant smiles. Maya, watching from a distance, could not deny that change was real. Yet she knew the storm ahead would be fierce. Love could open doors, but power never yielded quietly. The storm arrived sooner than either expected. Arav's father summoned him, fury simmering beneath polished words. "Our name has built empires for generations," he hissed. "And you tarnish it with beggars and a bookseller? Do you wish to be remembered as the fool who destroyed everything?" Arav's silence was defiance enough. His father slammed the table, declaring he would end this madness. Plans were made quickly, without Arav's consent. An engagement to a wealthy heiress was announced in glossy magazines. Smiling photographs appeared, though Arav had never agreed to them. Maya's heart shattered when she saw the headlines. She had believed his change, believed his words in the fire, and now the world mocked her faith. She withdrew, pouring her soul into her work. Children noticed the shadows in her smile, but she insisted nothing was wrong. At night, though, she replayed every memory, wondering if she had been nothing more than a chapter in his rebellion. Arav, trapped in his father's house, raged against the invisible chains. He refused to attend the engagement parties, yet the world moved on without his voice. The breaking point came on the night of the grand ceremony. Dressed in a suit chosen for him, Arav stood among chandeliers and cameras. Music swelled, glasses clinked, but his chest burned with suffocation. When the time came to announce his future, he tore the mask away. "I will not marry for wealth. I will not live for appearances. If love and humanity are a shame, then let me live in shame forever. Gasps filled the hall. His father's face blanched with rage, but Arav walked out, leaving behind the empire built for him. The media erupted. Some praised his courage, others called him reckless, but for Arav it was liberation that he sought Maya immediately. She was at the shelter, cradling a child who refused to sleep after the trauma of the fire. When she saw him, she froze. His clothes were torn, his hair disheveled, but his eyes were unshaken. He dropped to his knees, his voice breaking. I don't just love you, Maya. I love what you've given me, the truth that love is not a luxury for the privileged or a dream for the desperate. Love belongs to everyone. It is the only thing that can heal the world. One love. One humanity. Her tears fell, not of weakness but of release. She wanted to resist, to remind him of the pain, but his words carried the same conviction she had carried her whole life. She took his hand, not as a symbol of surrender but of partnership. Together, they would face what was coming. Word of his rebellion and their reunion spread like wildfire. Some ridiculed, some threatened, but others, especially the young, found courage in their story. Acts of kindness multiplied in markets, on buses, in offices. Strangers shared food. Neighbors began speaking again. Slowly, the city's pulse changed. Arav and Maya organized a march, not of protest but of unity. No banners of division, only hands held across barriers once thought unbreakable. Rich and poor, young and old, walked side by side through the streets. Their chant was simple, powerful, and impossible to ignore: one love, one humanity. At the heart of the crowd, Arav and Maya walked together, not as hero and heroine but as ordinary souls refusing to give up on what was possible. Cameras captured the moment, broadcasting to places far beyond their city, and then, as though fate wanted to close the circle, the old man reappeared. The same one who had collapsed in the rain, whose frail voice had planted the seed. He stood at the edge of the crowd, leaning on a stick, his smile faint but steady. He said nothing. He didn't need to. Maya's eyes met his, and Arav followed her gaze. The man lifted his hand in blessing before disappearing back into the sea of faces. The symbol was complete. That night, as silence fell after the march, Arav and Maya stood overlooking the city lights. They knew challenges would never vanish. Greed, hate, and division would rise again. But they also knew something stronger had been born. Their love was no longer just theirs. It belonged to everyone who had dared to believe, everyone who had taken a step toward kindness because of them. Love had become more than feeling, it had become a force, and so the story closed not with a kiss, not with promises of forever, but with the truth that bound them all: when one person dares to care, when one person dares to love beyond self, humanity itself is reborn. One love. One humanity. Always.